Are you studying marine engineering or getting ready to sit your Engineering Officer Watch oral exam? If you are, then this book is actually really helpful for you. And the reason it is because it's one source where you can find a whole bunch of past orals questions in a nice easy to access format. And I just thought, since we released the book a couple of years ago, it'd be really nice just to open it up, have a look inside, and see what you can get when you get this book. So there's 4 sections: segregated questions, mini mocks, full length past orals, and sample responses. So let's just run through what you get with each of those. In section 1, what I've done is I've took previous orals questions that were available from online, and I've reviewed them, ran through them, and I then split them into their different sections. And the reason for this is it makes it easier for you if you're studying particular topics for your oral exam, where you can say, right, I want to see watchkeeping or auxiliary systems and so on. You can just go straight to that section and you'll get all of the former watchkeeping exams questions, former electrical system oral questions and so on. So let's just have a look. Section 1, segregated questions. So here you can go, you can see you've got your watchkeeping questions, and you can see all the watchkeeping things there. Now what I decided to do, or what I thought would be really useful, is just have a notes section for each of the bits. So as you're working through the questions themselves and working on them, you can keep notes of which questions you've attempted, maybe put some answers in here, all that kind of stuff. So that's your watchkeeping ones. And you can see you've got your typical questions which come under watchkeeping, asking you about your ship's details, how you do a handover, walk rounds, unmanned machinery space, emergency responses, and so on. If we go to the next one, here we have all of the past orals questions relating to main and auxiliary systems. And again, these have been broken down into things like main engine. You can see any of the questions relating to the main engine, stuff that you might get in your orals. Systems-based questions, so your lube oil system, fuel oil system, cooling water system, and so on. Electrical system questions, maintenance procedures questions, pollution prevention questions, naval art questions, firefighting questions, LSA questions, legislative requirement questions. So effectively what you have here are all the different topics that have been split, segregated, and just put into one area. So if you want to focus on, say, your legislation questions, which I know that students often do want to do, they kind of want to tackle one topic at a time, you can do that because now you can just open up to the legislation section and you've got all your legislation relevant past oral questions in one easy bit. The reason that I quite like this method, and the reason it's proven popular I think with students, is that it gives you a nice simple checklist you can work through. So you know when you've completed the question, you know when you've revised it, because you can see very clearly when you've ticked it off basically. That's the first section of the book right there. That's your first section. And as I say, that's all the past orals questions that have been segregated into their different topics right there. So nice, easy, quick, accessible resource. And again, it's not a case you have to hunt through it because you've got a nice guide here at the front. So it tells you what page number, and it even shows you all the individual subtopics broken down and the relevant page number. So you can get to it straight away. So if you want to ask questions or review past orals questions on generators, you can see you can just jump straight to page 55. And unsurprisingly, there you go, generator-based past orals questions. Section 2 here is mini mocks, and what you have in section 2 are 50 of these little 5 question sets, which allow you to basically just quickly test yourself. Now, when I was writing these, or putting them together I should say, the idea behind this was that you might be sat in the library with one or two other folk, and you just want to give yourself a quick test, or to test your friend on a question. So you can actually just select at random any of these 5 question sets and just run through them. And what it does, some of them focus on a particular topic, some of them are just randomized. And what it does is it helps you break up your revision period a little bit, just to make it a bit more interesting and a bit less dull, because you can just quickly quiz yourselves on it. Now, what I thought was also going to be useful for yourselves is when you're asking the question, you can run through it, and when you've given it an attempt, you can sort of tick making progress. And once you can answer all of them quite easily, it allows you to then select satisfactory. So that's just a nice way of just tracking what you have attempted and what you haven't attempted. And as I say, you can see there's 50 of them. And all these are a selection from the questions from section 1, sort of randomised, if you like. Section 3 is probably the bit that was the main inspiration for the book, which is interesting because you'd think, well, section 1 would be where you start. But actually, when I was writing these, initially the book was just going to be section 3, which was past orals questions. But as I was writing it, I thought what would be much more useful, rather than just have past orals questions in a single book, is to have them segregated. That's where section 1 came from. And then from section 1, section 2, these mini mocks, I thought that would be quite useful as well, just to break it up a wee bit and give you something else to work with, and that hence section 2 was born. But yeah, section 3, it does what it says on the tin really. These are just 26 sets of past orals questions. And these came from students that I've discussed with, various sources online, where people had sort of posted their formal orals question sets. As I say, there's 26 of them here. Now, these aren't just straight up copy and pastes from online questions. And the reason being is that obviously when you come out of an oral exam, you probably don't remember every single question that you were asked, right? Because it's quite a stressful event. You've just come out, you've either just passed or failed, so you're not going to exactly remember every single question you were asked. And also, the reason they're not just copy and paste is because when people write their questions, they usually just write down, maybe like a short sentence of what was, like question on main engine, question on jacket water cooling system, something like that. So what I did was I went through each of these past oral sets, and basically I expanded the questions to make sense effectively. So they're fully written out questions. They're still based on actual past oral questions. The only difference is I've kind of fleshed them out a wee bit. And likewise, where I felt that the topic jumped suddenly from one to another, it was very clear to me that maybe a question was missed out, or there would be a greater number of questions than were asked according to what people posted. So I've basically gone in and filled in the blanks here. So what you have is full sets of, I think, as close as possible to what you would get to actual past oral question sets as such. And certainly the feedback that I've had from students who have used these, I've actually found them quite useful. So yeah, that's, in a nutshell, that's basically what the past oral questions are. As I say, there's 26 of them in total. Mainly because at that point we're you could keep going and adding more and more past oral question sets, but 26 is probably more than sufficient, because what I noticed was once we went past 24, 25, you're really just covering all the same questions over and over again, just asked in a slightly different format in a slightly different order. So there isn't really much benefit to going past 26 at that point. And we come on to the final section, which is the sample responses. So I did consider adding more sample responses to this section, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things that can spiral very, very quickly. And in some ways, I think it's a course unto itself. Hence why I actually went and made a completely separate set of resources for people to go through past oral questions with responses. I'll stick a link to that in the comments down below. But effectively what this is it just picks 4 typical questions, which you can see here, which is how would you go about taking over a watch, how do you parallel a generator, what LSA did you have on board, and what would you change, or how do you go about changing the bearing on a purifier. And what it does is it inspects, not just what's your ideal response to that as such, but it looks at the question more broadly. What is it the examiner's asking here? What is it they're looking for you to be able to respond with? What are the key critical things? It's like, for example, changing the bearing on a purifier motor. If we have a look at that, you see there's a big block of text up here, right? And obviously that's not part of the answer. But what I go into here, what I talk about here, is actually the examiner isn't really interested in the specifics of the purifier itself, right? They're not that overly interested in hearing about bearing pullers and bearing heaters and all that kind of stuff. What they're looking for here, what these type of questions really get at, is can you do the job safely? Do you understand the importance of following the manufacturer's procedures? Risk assessment, permit to work, isolation procedures. These are the key things. And so what I've done actually is when I've gone through, I suppose you could say, a model answer. I'm not going to say the model answer because there's obviously differences of opinion and how it can be answered and so on and so forth. And really this is, rather than rote learning this, which I don't recommend in the slightest, what I'm pointing out here is just simply the key things that you want to be thinking about when you're giving your answer. How do you want to structure that answer? So when the examiner asks you, how do you do job X, that you are able to provide a structured response that covers all the key things they're looking for. Good safety, good isolation, procedure, manufacturer's instructions, all that kind of stuff. So that's really all that's about here. And the reason there's only 4 is because really, once you understand how to answer that type of question, you can apply that to other questions you're asked as well. So that, everyone, in a nutshell, is the pastorals book. It's proven to be quite useful for students, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, the feedback we've had has been generally quite positive. I would love to hear your thoughts on the book, if there's anything you think that could be improved on it, if there's anything you would like to see in the book, or changed about, or removed, or anything like that. That would be really great. Other than that, that's it from me. Hope you've enjoyed this little video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.